welcome to my channel.
Talking about someone being crooked, mentally impaired, lying stupid. What do you think?
I have the same reaction you have, Lawrence, and thank you so much for having me on tonight. It's like he's looking in a mirror every time he opens his mouth now. We've long known that Donald uses very frequently a defense mechanism known as projection, in which he takes things that he unconsciously knows about himself but can't bear and projects them onto other people. That has been happening with increasing frequency over the last, well, let's see, when did that happen? Yes, when Vice President Harris became his opponent for the presidency. It's really, really made him unravel in a way we haven't seen before. So clearly, it's not that she's getting under his skin because he couldn't figure out how to adjust to a new strategy and a new opponent. It's because she pushes his buttons in a way very few people ever have.
Did he drive you to it? Did your crazy uncle drive you to becoming a clinical psychologist? And I don't know why I haven't wondered about this before, but it hit me today. And I just thought, I think I might have to do that if I had an uncle who was that crazy.
Well, unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. I've said this before, but it bears repeating because I think well, hopefully it will make people think about the choices they make in their lives. Donald was one of 5 children. My grandparents had 5 children, and every single one of them, including Donald, is and was a destroyed human being. So as shocking as it may seem, Donald actually was not the worst person in my family. He's the worst one now because he has, unfortunately, power that continues to be bestowed on him by a bankrupt Republican Party and tens of millions of Americans. But, you know, the whole family system was so broken from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding in this book, which takes it's a wider lens on it all, I found, than your previous book. You say this about your uncle. You say, nobody liked Donald when he was growing up, not even his parents. As he got older, those personality traits hardened, the hostile indifference and aggressive disrespect that he developed as a toddler to help him withstand the neglect he suffered at his parents' hands. You say Fred Trump, his father, was incapable of loving anybody.
Yeah, and it shows, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that my father's generation obviously suffered the most because they were closest to the sociopathy and severe psychological distress. My grandfather's sociopathy and my grandmother's own psychological and emotional issues. But it definitely filtered down. I mean, clearly none of us has escaped unscathed. And I think when you look at it from the perspective of not just being relatives, but being Americans, you know, Donald Trump has been in a position to have an impact on everybody's daily life for almost 8 years now. And if you add into that this family dysfunction and the scars that have been inflicted by being a member of this family, it really does begin to take a toll.
This is a book that I know is written for contemporary readers, and the New York Times bestseller list is proving that. But I am sure the book I'm holding in my hands right now will be held in the hands of historians 100 years from now, who are contemplating this man, and it's such a valuable asset. I say that as someone who has done a lot of study of President Franklin Roosevelt, and if there could have been a family member writing a volume like this about that family at that time and the branches of that family, it would just be invaluable, as this is going to be to history. Do you feel that pressure, if it is, as you're writing this, that historians are going to be reading this for a couple of 100 years?
That's extraordinarily kind of you to say. I have never thought about it that way, but I do hope that my first book, which I consider a psychological history of a family, and this one, which is absolutely a very personal memoir together, will give people insight into how Donald became how he is and how we as a country found this acceptable, but also hopefully it will give us insight into, or I should say, validate our own experiences over the last 8 years. You know, we're not going crazy. We should feel hurt and harmed by everything that's happened at this man's hands, and to be able to share my insight into how he became this way and the impact it's had on me and others, I consider it a privilege, actually.
The new book, which will be in libraries forever, is called Who Could Ever Love You? A Family.
Mary Trump, Donald, a destroyed human being whose dad was incapable of loving anybody. By Eric de la Garza. Mary Trump, a clinical psychologist and niece of Donald Trump, told MSNBC Monday night that her uncle is a destroyed human being whose inflamed criticisms of Kamala Harris are being driven by a defense mechanism as a reaction to the vice president becoming the Democratic nominee. Donald uses very frequently a defense mechanism known as projection, in which he takes things that he unconsciously knows about himself but can't bear and projects them onto other people, Mary Trump told MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell Monday night on his show Last Word. That has been happening with increasing frequency over the last, well, let's see, when did that happen? Yes, when Vice President Harris became his opponent for the presidency, she said. She said Harris replacing President Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee really made him unravel in a way we haven't seen before, adding that Harris is clearly getting under his skin. She pushes his buttons in a way few people ever had, Mary Trump said. When asked by O'Donnell if her crazy uncle is what compelled her to become a clinical psychologist, she said unfortunately he wasn't the only one, explaining that Donald Trump is one of 5 children and every single one of them was and is a destroyed human being. As shocking as it may seem, Donald was not the worst one in my family, Mary Trump said. She cautioned though that is only because he has, unfortunately, power that continues to be bestowed on him by a bankrupt Republican Party and tens of millions of Americans. But the whole family system was so broken from the very beginning. In her tell-all memoir, Who Could Ever Love You?, a New York Times bestseller, Mary Trump wrote that nobody liked Donald when he was growing up, not even his parents, adding that his father, Frank Trump, was incapable of loving anybody. Watch the clip below or at this link.
Xin chào các bạn, hôm nay mình cùng các bạn lại cùng nhau tô màu với chủ đề động vật, và chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau hoàn thành bức tranh con báo. Chúng ta cùng nhau bắt tay vào hoàn thành bức tranh nhé. Các bạn ơi, giờ chúng ta cùng bắt tay vào tô hình con báo này nhé. Đầu tiên chúng ta sẽ dùng màu đen để tô phần đốm và phần mắt của con báo. Phần đốm rất là nhỏ và khó tô các bạn ạ. Con báo có rất nhiều đốm phải không các bạn? Chúng ta sẽ tô tròn tròn để cho dễ tô các bạn ạ. Sau đó chúng ta sẽ tô phần mắt. Và chúng ta sẽ tô phần móng. Và chúng ta sẽ tô màu đỏ vào mũi nhé. Phần mặt của con báo màu vàng. Mình đã tô xong phần mặt rồi, giờ chúng ta sẽ dùng màu cam để tô đến phần thân. Các bạn ơi, vậy là mình đã hoàn thành xong bức tranh hình con báo rồi. Các bạn thấy có đẹp không ạ? Mình cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi video của mình. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn vào video lần sau. Tạm biệt các bạn.